All right, looks like we're live now. Welcome to Goddess Vibrations, the spiritual sexual empowerment show. Today we're talking about finding your way through overwhelm with pleasure. And I've got my favorite coach, Tara Cridland here. I got really positive feedback last time you were on, Tara, so I'm really excited to have you on again. A lot of folks, including myself, learned so much. And as I said just before we went live, this could not be better timing for this topic because, man, I was mapping out my dissertation and my pilot study plan and my plan to graduate with my PhD, hopefully by 2222 is could be my graduation date, Dr. Natasha Edwina. And if that's to happen, I need to find the way through overwhelm because there's just way too much. It feels like way too much for one person to do, and I can get frozen and stuck. And I know I'm not the only one out there, as we're all, moving and reconfiguring our lives as the world changes and reconfiguring our businesses and our finances and all of that.
Yes.
So, I mean, how do we go back to the body and use simple tools to move through that? What do you have to teach us today?
Yeah. Well, I think the number one, so for me, in my own personal experience, when I was 37, so that was a few years ago, I actually had complete and total burnout. And they're now recognizing it as a medical condition, burnout, and you have levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. And level 4 is when you get to you're either hospitalized or you are dead, basically. And I was at level 4, and I was stubborn, and I could do it myself. And I was still a single mom, and I was working like 5 jobs and all these things to be home with my children more, but then also have that full-time income and just doing it the way that and this is really hard for a lot of women to hear, and even some men, is that we are trained to operate in the patriarchal society where we work really hard, burn the candle at both ends, and go into overwhelm, and that we get pat on the back for that, right? You do such a great job. You work so many hours. You never take a lunch break. You're always available. You say yes to everybody. And then and for women, that puts us in overwhelm. It puts us in burnout. And from there, we just shut down. Our bodies completely shut down. So at that point, you won't be in burnout anymore because you just won't be able to get out of bed. But it takes a long time to recover. I had almost full adrenal failure. So it was extreme fatigue that was at a very close level of being a failure, and had to be put on medication for that. And so just a lot of realizations. And I already knew, I knew better because I was back then I was a massage therapist, and I was also still a life coach and a yoga teacher and a holistic nutrition coach back then. And I was still not practicing what I was teaching. So I was practicing the lifestyle of doing yoga every day. I was practicing lifestyle of eating really well. But then I was also working every day. I was working 7 days a week, thinking that's what I have to do to make. And then I had this moment that same year, right when I was going into that overwhelm, where I actually then worked every day, made all this money to buy all these gifts for my kids for Christmas, and then literally ran over a homeless lady. So literally, I'm in this stage. I worked every day to make all this money for presents for them. And this homeless woman, I lived in Las Vegas at the time, runs across 6 lanes of traffic, manages to not be hit by anyone until she gets to me, the very last lane. And she literally runs right in front of my car in the dead of night. It's like 11 o'clock at night, and comes barreling up on my hood, and I literally ran her over. And it's almost comical now because she slammed my brakes on, she goes running away. They find her. She's extremely intoxicated. She was a 2.7 alcohol level, extremely intoxicated. But it was all that money I worked so hard to make went right back to fixing my car, and then it didn't go to Christmas. So my lesson in all that was working harder is not definitely smarter. And especially for women, it doesn't accomplish anything except to give you burnout. It makes it so that you don't actually have time for your friends and family or yourself, and you don't get much accomplished, really. And for some women who do that, yeah, they might make a lot of money, but what sacrifice? So going into that overwhelm, it just doesn't serve you. So that's when I started my journey getting to the point that I'm at now, working with women. Is I had to come back from that. I had to come back from overwhelm, from burnout, from not being able to barely function, to how can I live my best quality life, but in a way that actually is pleasurable, that fills me up, and how to slow down. Even now I have clients who, they come to me and they want to connect with their eroticism. They want to connect with their sexual power. And I said, what are you doing? And they're like, I'm in this training program, and this training program, and this training program. And I'm doing this training program, and I'm doing this. And they're like, literally like this, I'm going to find this if it kills me. And it's a very patriarchal type energy of being in 5 different training programs all at the same time. And not once have they actually taken a time to go still and breathe and connect in to their bodies and actually feel what's going on. And when you finally get them to stop and slow down, they're like, I'm exhausted. Of course you don't feel turned on. Of course you don't feel erotic. How can you feel that way when you're absolutely exhausted? So yeah, so this is a really beautiful time for you, like even to start to prioritize, how do I bring pleasure into my life and start my day this way, and take little pleasurable breaks and still accomplish all that I want to accomplish, and trust that I can do all this without doing so much all at once.
Yeah, because I feel like, I tell women, you can have it all, but at what cost? Like you were saying, you can be the perfect housewife, you can be, out in the career, the breadwinner, you can do all of this stuff, but what's left at the end of the day for you to enjoy? Are you really enjoying life? And I've been through adrenal fatigue about 4 times as well. And, I've been teaching workshops on burnout for therapists for over 20 years. And then of course I go into stress management and as a science and as a specialty. So I think, again, we teach what we need to learn, and we're drawn to go into the work that we most need in our lives as well, or most enjoy doing as well. And so now I'm at the point too, where I'm understanding that feminine alignment, like we were talking about with Mercury retrograde too. Like, okay, I'm really flexible. I'm all about the alignment. I trust the divine timing. And I'm getting a little tired of being extra flexible too. Like you have to trust. There's a lot of trust and faith. And so my question also is, if you are in that place, like today, I went to the beach, I got some sun, I kind of I did slow down. I've gotten really good at slowing down. But then what happens if I don't get enough of those tasks done? Then my mind is going a million miles a minute because I have this and this and this. And I'm like, oh man, I forgot to email that person back and I didn't do this. And so, how do we even manage that mind stuff if we can't get the right speed? Because I feel like I've been going, burning the candle at both ends, and then I'm like fully unsubscribe from that. And then I go to moving at my pleasurable rate. And then I'm like, oh shit, stuff isn't getting done, or I'm dropping the ball. So, but again, it's still like burning the candle at both ends mentally, right? So my body is physically exhausted because my mind is still going. And here I am, a meditation teacher and all these things as well. And so, but it's still hard. So I just want to normalize that for anybody that's watching this too. It's just really freaking hard, when you have a lot on your plate and you're a mother and you've got a career and you're taking care of the household tasks. And I'm thinking to myself a lot of days, like I could fill over 8 hours a day just taking care of my children in my house. And then I got to worry about making money, but it's time to go to bed. So how do we fit in all of these things? And a lot of times I'm doing like 3 things at once or 5 things at once. So like this weekend on Sunday morning, I do a dance thing. It's social connection, it's nature, it's moving energy out of my body, it's fitness, it's laughter, it's emotional release, all wrapped up in 2 hours, right? So that's a very efficient use of my time. But I don't want to, and it's pleasurable, and it's, a circle of women. So I feel like this is aligned with the divine feminine and pleasure. But also, what are some other things that we can do if whichever spectrum you're on, if people are on this like run, rush, or they're like me, and it's like, okay, and now I'm getting lost in my vortex,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's some simple things, like for especially, and it's both men and women who can practice this, is when you first wake up in the morning, Where's your phone at? Is it next to your bedside table? Are you immediately grabbing it and scrolling on it? So how do you shift that habit? Well, you can't just say, I'm going to stop doing it, right? You have to change that. Like I actually put my phone in my office. So it's all the way in the other side of the house and I'd have to get up and go get it. So what that encourages me to do is I get up in the morning and instead what I can reach for is my jade egg. So I grab my jade egg and I do a jade egg practice. And so, or I do a breathwork practice because now I don't know who's calling. I don't know who's emailing. And I'm going to get to all that, right? I'm going to get to that. But when I wake up, I know even if it's 3 to 5 minutes that I'm going to do something to bring myself back into awareness, bring myself back into my wakingness. So that's one simple thing that we can do is we can actually start creating these like morning rituals that we do when we first wake up is how do we get the electronics away from us? So get the phone in another room, get the computer somewhere else, knowing that we're not going to touch it for at least the first 30 minutes of waking up. You know, if you're someone who has difficulty with your mind swirling all over, then you can do meditation and maybe have something that's not your phone that can play music or, you know, there's different things you can do. You can always have like the Alexa speaker that says, Alexa, play this, you know, and you can pull that up or have something preset where it actually does still have that, but it's encouraging you to do 3 to 5 minutes of meditation. And the other thing that I found for me is I like to do like a brain dump. So you can brain dump the night before, put everything down. And then, and for me, sometimes I don't like to write it out. Sometimes I really just, I'm a verbal person. So I'll just say it all out loud, all the things I have to do. And then I repeat to myself. For me personally, I found that I repeat to myself, like, I trust the flow of tomorrow and I know what's important will arise and the rest, I'm going to learn how to prioritize them so that if it has to be done tomorrow, that's going to get done. If not, then it's okay if it waits another day.
I love that. So say that again. I trust, because this could definitely.
I trust the flow of my life. I trust that what's most important is going to arise. I'm going to focus on that today, trusting that the rest of it can be done on another day. So really learning how to prioritize. We do have so many things, but really at the end of the day, you don't have to do all this stuff, right? We think we do, but we don't. And if we focus more on 1 or 2 really important things per day, then we're going to get that done and more efficient and get things done faster than what I find a lot of women end up doing. I'm guilty of it myself, is we have 20 things on our list, right? Then we start getting really busy. We try to do this and then we break and we go do this. And we do, by the end of the day, we end up getting nothing done because we're trying to do it all at once.
Yeah,
but if you
really, a lot of half done things and nothing gets completed.
Yeah. So in the evening, I try to do some breath work. I try to create rituals. So for me, I have a ritual of like, even your face washing, like massaging. And I take that time to think, okay, what's the most important thing that I need to accomplish tomorrow? What is my most important goal that has to get done tomorrow for me to move forward with what I'm really desiring? And is it something that I have to get kind of uncomfortable around? Is it okay? Like how can I actually expand my boundary a little bit and get a little uncomfortable? So for you, like your PhD, like what is the most important thing that you need to actually have accomplished to really move forward with that? Like what's the most important thing? So being really clear on that, like being honest with yourself, but finding stillness with that instead of, oh yeah, I have this. That's okay. Acknowledge the busyness, acknowledge all the stuff going on. Those thoughts never disappear. They don't ever go away. That's the one thing. And then also is where we're hard on ourselves, right? We're really hard as women, especially on ourselves, on it all is being acknowledged. And somehow we're supposed to be able to just acknowledge everything, but then we're supposed to not stress. We're supposed to stay calm. And so we stress ourselves out more because we're constantly analyzing ourselves and what we should do, right? We're shooting on ourselves and learning how to instead, okay, if I come from a space of pleasure, how can I fill myself up with simple things that are pleasurable, that'll allow me to focus on 1 or 2 really important things that I have to do today? So creating the ritual of waking up in the morning and having that little meditation or self-pleasure session. So self-pleasure doesn't mean that you're masturbating. It doesn't mean that you're orgasm, but it might be breath work. Or for me, I like to get up sometimes and I just touch my skin and reconnect to myself and just say like, gosh, I really love myself. I love myself. How can I nourish myself today? What do I really need? What do I need to feel really nourished today? And then allowing myself to connect to what comes up. And it seems like a long process, but it really takes 2-3 minutes, just allowing that.
That was going to be my question, because obviously I know the concept of starting your day with pleasure and starting with these rituals. And I know you've suggested, and my partner and I have been doing this religiously. Every morning we say our gratitudes in the morning. I'm usually half asleep because he's the morning person and I'm the night owl. And then we say what we appreciate about each other. And that's, starting the day with gratitude and appreciation. And then sometimes you actually start the day with pleasure, with mutual pleasure, with, sexual interactions, but also living the goddess life. You want to do it right. You want to invest the time. You want to let that. And sometimes you can't do that every morning because that becomes, think about it. If sex is a meditation, and meditation can take up 30 minutes to an hour a day. And then, so you're doing that. Both he and I are on the spiritual path. So we have daily meditation. And then sex is being an additional meditation, and then anything else you do, a morning ritual or exercise, another half hour, another hour. So you start to fill up your day even with self-care before you even get to the work. You could easily do this. So I love that idea of you've already said 3 very simple things that anyone could implement. You said the brain dump, which I've used before, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. I think it came out of that book, The Art of Getting Things Done or something like that. But I think his name was, gosh, I can't remember his name, but I know I have the book. I read it several years ago. But he talks about, you just take a notebook paper and you just write down everything. You said you like to do it verbally, but you write down everything you have to do.
Sometimes I do it right. Sometimes I'm tired. I just want to do it verbally. Brain dump. There's another little trick I learned years ago, and I don't even remember where we learned it from because it wasn't even from a book. It was from this like free recording thing I attended a long time ago. And it's this woman, it's like a free writing technique. So if you're not someone let's say you're not a big meditator, there's going to be people watching this right now, right? They're not a big meditator, or they just have too much of a busyness of a brain. Is you're allowing yourself to free write 2 to 3 minutes of complaining. So you actually complain, which can be pleasurable. And you start saying like, I forgot to call my sister. I totally didn't get this done. I totally didn't exercise. Oh my gosh, I really hated last night because this happened. And you actually free write all these things that are like the negative, right? The complaints, and allow it to just be free, like let it go. Because we're also taught that you're never allowed to be negative. You're never allowed to complain. Yeah. So if you allow yourself to
speak that into existence.
Right. What if you're allowed to what if you give yourself permission? Like I'm inviting people, give yourself permission to allow yourself a container of complaining.
Well, because if you have the container, then you don't have to let it bleed over into every interaction. Because we all know those people that every time you talk to them, and I know I've been that person sometimes where it's like I'm like complaining every time I open my mouth or somebody asks me a question. And it's like, geez, if I just had, that container to let it all go, then I'm done with it. And then we can focus on.
Exactly. So that works really beautiful for men, and also works beautiful for women that are maybe more structured. So it is a feminine energy to still be structured. So you might have women watching this tonight that are more of a structured type person who they like to have their days. Like, my girlfriend that I'm actually moving to Mexico with, she's very structured. She's very feminine and she's very in touch, but she's very structured. So someone like that, with that person there, where everything's scheduled in her schedule, can actually allow themselves to have a journal that they wake up and they immediately just allow themselves to complain about what went wrong yesterday, what they forgot to do, what they hate, what they didn't like. And it frees their mind now to focus on what they want to accomplish. It frees their mind and so what I recommend to bring pleasure, that is allow yourself to do that, and then spend a minute self-resourcing by touching your skin and really connecting back with love, and even saying like, I love me. And I'm so glad that I gave myself that permission to do that. And just caress yourself and allow like that reconnection to yourself. So that's a really simple way. And when you do
parenting too, for those of us who grew up with parents who are telling us everything we did wrong, but not so free with what we did right. So it's kind of rechanging that wiring even in the brain. And then once we rechange that wiring, then we magically start to dissolve those obstacles to success too, and moving forward, because a lot of times it's that mental programming that holds us back, which
those little fences, right? So those little fences we put in front of us that tell us that if this isn't perfect, then we shouldn't proceed. And so if we allow ourselves to put all the imperfect things down on paper and allow ourselves the permission to let it out and complain about it, or just realize it, then it frees us from that. Because then all of a sudden there's a great game to play called What's the Worst That Will Happen. And you can just go, you can go all the way down to, and then I die. Well, what it's like to die. And then all of a sudden you realize it's not so scary anymore. So now it's not an obstacle. Like, let yourself go there, have those moments. Another great thing in Overwhelm. So like you had all this crazy stuff happening with your PhD and you have all these things. So finding it for you, what is the most important thing that you need to actually accomplish that will help move you forward? What is the one step? One of the things that I remember learning on my own, and it really applies to our femininity as well, and into our like more flow space, is when you walk in a house or a room that's really messy and you have to clean it, when you look at it as a whole, it becomes overwhelming, right? So overwhelming. But when you look at it one corner at a time and you start from what just has to be done in this corner, and then that corner is accomplished, and then allow yourself a little break. Go have a nice cup of tea or a dance break. Like that's a great for, especially for women, to take yourself out of your head, is to set regular dance breaks where you just turn on music and dance for that song and move your body and feel back into your sensuality, and allow that to inspire you into solution making, right? Because a lot of times when we go into overwhelms too, is because we're not seeing the solutions. We're only seeing the problem. And when we allow ourselves to take a breath, we allow ourselves to move, and we allow ourselves to stop going into this overwhelmed stress cycle, and instead be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to dance, and I'm going to allow myself a new perspective. And I'm going to trust that the solution is going to show itself to me. And for some people, maybe it is the moment of taking a little short break and having a self-pleasure session. That doesn't mean you have to.
It sounds so simple, but it's really revolutionary, because when we are stressed or in crisis mode or overwhelmed or freeze, and this is really a stage of fight or flight too, burnout, adrenal fatigue, whatever you want to call it, there's different levels of this. But when we're there, we cannot come up with innovative solutions, because our brain cannot be creative.
We're in survival
of everything's going on with the nervous system is like crisis, protection, defense mode, just hold tight and wait till the storm passes. But that doesn't allow you to really move forward. And so to be able to come up with a creative solution, we really do have to just relax, let out the energy, relax our nervous system, so that we can be open to that.
Exactly. And for women especially, we are so much more critical and analytical on ourselves than men are. Men be like, and this is macho men. Like, now I'm not saying all men, but a lot of the like machismo type cultures where they're just like, well, that sucked and I failed, and oh well. And then they kind of punch a punching bag, or they go for a run, and then they move forward. But women aren't like that, right? We all hold on to it. It's stuck in our bodies. It starts to circulate. We start to revisit what we did wrong, where we failed, where we're not good enough, where we didn't measure up, how we're an imposter, how we're a fraud. So when we have those overwhelm type thought processes, then allowing ourselves to say, okay, I acknowledge that this is in there, and I'm going to actually go back to shaking my booty and being sexy for a minute, and remind myself what a goddess I am, and trust that I am so powerful that I don't have to find the solution. It's going to come to me naturally. And I'm going to let my brain and my body let down for just 1 minute, and allow the magic to happen in that space. And it's like you said, it seems so simple, but you have to actually give yourself permission. You have to be able to, like right now, one of the things I've learned so deeply is that we need permission, right? So I'm going to give everyone who's listening and watching this, that you have permission to take dance breaks. You have permission to write complaints and let it out. You have permission to let yourself go for a minute, because it doesn't make the world end. It actually makes the world begin. And so those are some like just beginning things. So when we go into overwhelm, and also when you're looking at, you have this huge PhD, right? What's the one little thing in the corner you can take care of before you take your dance break? What's the one little thing you can do?
Well, that's the hardest part. Clarity at this stage of the game is not easy to come by. This is where it gets real cloudy, and I feel like a lot of people at the dissertation phase are going down a labyrinth. They're like going down this way and they're like, oh, that didn't work. Back up, go down this way. Oh, that didn't work. Back up, which for me is like one of my worst nightmares, is to be inefficient or not like find the shortest, most effective path, because there's so much other competing priorities in my life. And so it's like, how do you even prioritize? Everything feels like a priority. And then how do I find clarity when I don't know? I get the clarity by bumping up against the wall sometimes. So it's
Right.
like the fear almost of wasting too much time, or because so much time has already passed. And then it goes back to this. I think what you're talking about is like what women tend to do is hold on and beat ourselves up for not doing it right or not doing it the masculine way. And then that brings into, another question is, even if we master this feminine way of doing things, this working smarter, not harder, which is becoming a little bit easier to do, the world is still operating on a different paradigm. So
Yeah.
so I love doing business with my sister goddesses, and I love spending social time with my sister goddesses, because there is a mutual respect for each other's time and each other's schedule. And with that comes flexibility, but not a rigidness. And
Yeah.
so it's like, if I'm going to be, well, for instance, this morning, there was a couple of minor miscommunications along the way that ended up like, oh, shoot, we're not meeting. It's not going to be able to happen. Right. And there was some disappointment on my end. I was like, oh, man. And then I started to kind of like beat myself up, like, how did I do this? And all of this stuff. But then and then you said something, you were like, I trust that
I completely trust the universe. And if this is not working today, there's a reason for it.
right. But then we live in a world that's like, you needed to be here on time. I'm not going to work with you. You don't have the work ethic, like this boot camp kind of reflection.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to be an hour late for an appointment and not tell people that you're going to be late because you're doing your makeup and you got a little carried away. And quite another to have, like you said, you're trying to get rid of some furniture. This happened, another thing happened. And then you communicate that with whatever. Obviously, airplanes need to go on time, but social meetings or whatever, there's a lot in life that can be reworked.
Life happens. Life happens, right? And we've been taught not allowed to life happen, that when life happens, it's not acceptable because it made you late for something.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, really, truly, it's like there was some gentle wires that got crossed, but now there's an extra week of this beautiful intention of getting even more clear what you really want to bring into that moment, into that next session, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I really learned through my processes, and that I've learned like for so many years, even before I was before I like became a sex, love, and relationship coach, was that everything happens for a reason. And almost any time when I truly started leaning back and trusting myself and trusting the way this world truly works, I've experienced where if I'm running late, magically the client's running late. And so there's a reason for it, right? Whatever that reason is,
every
there's
time I meet
always,
with you.
right? The universe supports us always. And for me, I've literally had experiences where I'm like, okay, well, I totally ran late because I spent an extra minute putting on lipstick I really wanted to wear today. And then I get there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so late. And I said, you know what? No, I can bend time and I can create folds in time, and I'm going to get there right on time. And I've literally had experiences where I'm walking and it's like, I'm all suddenly at the building and I don't remember how I got there. And I get there with 1 minute to spare versus being late when I only had like 3 minutes to walk in and I was like 10 minutes walk away. So creating this, like learning that time truly is not linear. This society's created linear time, but it is not linear. Our time is actually very flexible and very non-linear. And when we learn to work within that area, the overwhelm becomes less overwhelming, right? Because now suddenly you're like, oh, but I can create more time. I can create more space. And actually doing one thing today is much more powerful than doing 5 not completed things today. And so
a good one.
Slowing down.
Treatable.
Exactly. Slowing down is the biggest thing I can absolutely tell women that they can do, that I'm experiencing with all my clients that come in. The one thing that I see that needs to happen with all of them, that had to happen with me, is they're in a whirlwind trying to accomplish by forcing it. They're trying to force, they have this square peg that they are trying to put in a round hole, and they're going to get that peg in that hole no matter what. And instead, I say, when's the last time you just stopped? What do you mean? Let's just close our eyes and take a deep breath. Thank yourself for giving yourself this 1 minute just for you. Just look around. We are, as humans, are taught we have to have all this money, we have to have all this stuff. And yeah, we can create all that. But you look at all the animals, and they're getting their whole life accomplished and eating all their food and being completely provided for. And yet they're sitting at the end of they're sitting here on the canal or over at the pond taking a nap because they're tired. And then all of a sudden they wake up and they have food. And, so the rest of nature on this planet goes with the cycle of the planet. They don't go with this linear time. And yes, of course, those who have jobs that they have to go to every day that are linear, you have to work kind of within those parameters, but there's still freedom within that. You still can find little spaces. One of the things that even came to me that I've done myself, and it makes it so much more fun, is you have all these things you have to do, right? They're all priorities. So what if you create little fun for me? I drove across country a couple of years ago to relocate, and I drove the whole way with a crown on. I wore a tiara the whole time. I was the queen of my vessel, and I drove my vessel where I wanted, and I chose my path, and I had the best, and I still got there like with days to spare. So allowing yourself, for you, finding a helmet that puts you in the bumper car. So putting the helmet on, literally, like finding some fun helmet and knee-high socks that puts you in the, okay, I'm on the dissertation where things might not work and I have to back up. So I'm going to put my bumper car gear on. And making it a fun experience. You can do that even at work in a corporate job. I had one client that they love hiking and trekking, and they want to live. They went through this huge transition, and they still wanted to connect to sexuality. So the homework was to go find a sexy little outfit that they could wear under their hiking clothes.
No, that's what I'm doing right now.
Exactly. So you're bringing a sense of funness to your daily activities, which is bringing pleasure, right? So now you're feeling more like, oh, I got the sexy outfit on. I'm still doing my thing. I'm wearing this thing that I love. And so all of a sudden you feel like more giddy, you feel more happy, you feel calmer. And then now you look at your computer and think, oh, why didn't I see that before? Oh, well, that's so easy. I could have totally done this like 2 hours ago.
I have that revelation all the time. It's just about getting started. It's getting through the mental, like,
right. So when we are so good at creating those blocks, right, to not even get the momentum started. So then asking yourself, like, what can I do to bring pleasure to this moment? So instead of doing all these, like you said, sexual practices in the morning and all these things that become like this, now it becomes a daunting list of pleasure, right? It becomes like daunting list of pleasure is, what can I do that's fun and pleasurable? Even just making it a conscious decision that you're going to have a cup of coffee and savor it instead of scarfing it down is really creating a ritual. So I went from, I don't do coffee anymore, but when I did, I made it a French press instead. I made this whole ritual around creating my drink for myself. And it doesn't take very long. So I boil the water, I'd put my coffee in the French press, and then I'd make it, and then I have to like kind of attend to it a little bit. And then now I poured it in and it's just all like the way you shift your energy. Now this coffee tastes so much better than I've ever tasted before. So allowing yourself to come into these new simple rituals as well, like creating pleasure that's attainable and easy, that takes you out of overwhelm. That allows you to.
It goes along with your, morning routine of just a little bit of pleasure, like you said, just stroking your skin or,
Yeah.
whatever, just a little, a couple minutes. It doesn't have to go to orgasm. It doesn't have to go to sexual intercourse with your partner, but at least so that you're starting your day. Like I said, I use the gratitude practice every morning, and then, not putting the pressure on to, it's either no pleasure or all, full bore, like, it has to be
And
slow
make
and
it
sensual.
small in digestible bites. So maybe you have a very busy day and
Mhm,
now you're thinking, I have to exercise, I have to go to the gym, I have to walk,
mhm,
and putting the pressure that you have to do all this and
mhm,
it's going to take an hour and you don't have an hour. So
mhm,
what if you then instead allow yourself little 2-minute dance breaks all throughout the day?
mhm,
You add that up by the end of the day and you have a half an hour of exercise that you did, but in a fun, easy, attainable, digestible way. So taking yourself out of this, I should and I need to, because what ends up happening is then it becomes overwhelming.
mhm.
And also now we don't actually ever get to it because we just didn't have the time.
Yep.
So instead,
Prepping
wake
my dissertation.
so you write, so allow yourself, okay, I'm going to write 3 paragraphs and then I'm
Mhm,
going to take a dance break.
mhm,
I am going to write 3 paragraphs and then I'm going to juice myself like a shot of my favorite little juice, just a little shot. I'm going to take that and I'm going to dance with it and then go back to. And
mhm,
so allowing yourself these small little breaks, these small little permission of pleasures throughout the day. So you start your day with little techniques that bring you pleasure, like disconnecting from electronics, allowing yourself to actually connect to yourself first before you get in. Because
mhm,
we've all been guilty of it. You get on your computer. And to be honest, I did it this morning. I got up and I was very, very tired. And I brought my journal out and I was sitting here and I prepared. I have this beautiful drink I get called mud water. It's so good.
Okay.
It's a coffee replacement. So I make that and it's my whole ritual and I sit down and I drink it. Well, silly me. And my brain even said, what are you doing? I got up and got my phone for something. And next thing I know, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't get any of my morning. I didn't get anything I actually wanted accomplished
Mhm,
at this point. And there was, and even so, and that's the thing, like I had made an appointment and it wasn't showing up, even that schedule showing up for the next day. So I'm thinking that maybe, but it's like, so looking at all that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to call them and have to, and if I would have sat there and drank my drink and allowed myself to journal for just like 1 minute, I would have gotten so much more clarity,
yeah.
been so much calmer, which I normally do daily. Like I normally do that daily. So also being able to tune into to the times when you are overexhausted or overtired, your habits that you created around this that actually take you out of your pleasure. So that's another thing to avoid, to help get out of overwhelm by going into pleasure is I now know that when I'm overtired, that if I touch anything electronic and I don't stick with my self-pleasure ritual of enjoying my morning drink and journaling or dancing or doing something for myself, I will take myself out of the game and I will become in this like busy mode where nothing gets done.
Mhm,
So being able to recognize that. And also the other thing too is when you don't do it, the biggest thing is be gentle and love on yourself and
mhm,
forgive yourself. It's not the end of the world if you don't do it perfect every day.
mhm,
It's slow, attainable. There's a fantastic book actually called Tiny Habits. It is by BJ Fogg, Fogg. And he actually created this book because he found that all the things that we've been taught by patriarchal society, by the linear society, by the corporations is not actually, doesn't work. You
mhm,
cannot create change
mhm,
from doing these big things. So
mhm,
he actually teaches you how to set yourself up for success by creating small, tiny, attainable habits. So for me, I was in a really bad car accident a year and a half ago, and I couldn't do the kind of exercise I used to do, but I'm still in really good shape. Why? Because I say, okay, well, I can do 20 minutes of yoga. Okay, today my neck's kind of hurting, so I'm going to do 5 push-ups or something. So I made like where I would all throughout the day, okay, I'm on my way to the bathroom. I'm going to pause and I'm going to do like 2 push-ups on the wall or something, or which he recommends doing that. That's how he started getting in shape, is he would actually use certain things like if I'm going to the bathroom, then I do 2 push-ups on the wall. So he also create this habit of certain triggers. So certain things then actually create the prompt for you to do this tiny habit.
mhm. Speaking,
So
speaking of pleasure, I
exactly.
decided to eat my apple while I'm listening.
Well, it's not only bringing a pleasure, but you're also not ignoring your needs. So what you're actually doing is you're allowing yourself, regardless of you being on live TV, basically, to show the world how to actually focus on still taking care of your needs and putting your needs first. And that's the other thing is overwhelm is we become overwhelmed too, and we don't actually take care of our basic human needs. When we're hungry, when we need a nap, when we have to go to the bathroom, we ignore all of that, right? We stop tuning into what our body needs and wants. And now suddenly we're just focused on the task and we become overwhelmed because we haven't even tuned in. Then if you finally stop and take a deep breath, you realize, I am ravenous. No wonder why I'm in overwhelm. I'm so hungry that I can't think.
Low blood sugar. And I was going to say for myself and probably a lot of mothers out there, the more people in your family, the harder it is to prioritize yourself, especially if your children are young. And and for me, I feel like I've gotten to a good place with that, because I've rejected society's notions of what makes a good mother. And I had to reject society's notions of what makes a good mother in order to actually be a good mother.
Yeah.
And I'm a good mother when I'm overflowing with care and love and energy and attention, so that I'm so nourished by my own taking care of my own needs, that when my children really, really need me, not for every little request, but when they really, really need me, I can stop and be there for them. And so that's one thing I definitely am proud of, that I brag that I've been able to be that kind of mother. And so even, doing the little things, like you said, like eating or drinking, or those 3 minutes of self pleasure, stroking your skin, whatever, rather than putting the pressure on yourself to even do leisure the right way,
Right.
are really, really, really powerful.
Letting go of that notion of what leisure is supposed to look like based on society's training, right? And that's very powerful. So that is something that was a huge affirmation for me as my children. Both of my daughters are now grown. When they were younger, my older one and I had done a project together, that she had this huge project and we worked really hard on it. And because it wasn't perfect, she didn't turn it in. So her teacher calls me and says, she didn't submit her project. I'm like, what? And so I go to her and she says, well, I'm missing the bibliography page. I forgot to do the bibliography. And I said, so you didn't turn it in for that? So you chose to take 0 points for one page missing versus taking it 80% and getting these points to actually finish school? And she was like, and I said, you know what? I'm very upset with you right now, but I'm going to I need to go do yoga to process this so that we can come up with a better solution. And my mom was actually there at this time and saw this whole interaction. I come back and she says, maybe if you worked out less and stopped doing so much stuff for yourself better. And before she could even finish the sentence, both of my children jumped in and went, no, mom is a better mom and much nicer to us when she goes and takes care of herself first. Do whatever you're going to tell her, stop. Because she is better with us and she's a better mom when she goes and she does her yoga and does her meditation and takes care of herself. She comes back and she's more patient and calm and more loving. And we like her better this way. And that's really what ended up happening. I was able then to come back and say, okay, I understand your need for perfectionism. I understand where your personality and why that happened for you. And we're going to give you permission right now that it doesn't have to be perfect, because your teacher's given you a special opportunity to turn this in as it is and still get points for it. And I really want to celebrate with you that you can actually get these points and graduate junior high and go on to high school, or you can choose not to turn it in because it's not perfect and then not make it to the next level for yourself. When our cup is full and overflowing, and this is one point that I think a lot of women need to hear. You cannot give to others when there's nothing left to give. If your well is dry, there's no way you can accomplish and be the kind of wife, mother, employee, business owner that you need to be,
Mhm.
right? So if your well is dry, there is nothing left to give. So how are you serving you, and how are you serving this planet and your children or your business in that space? You're not. So it is so important to re-nourish yourself, to bring yourself back into pleasure, bring yourself back into self-care. And self-care doesn't always have to be, I worked out for an hour and a half today. Sometimes it's just, you know what? I took a time and I did a dance break. And then tonight I took a nice bath with candlelight and listened to nice music just for me and recharged. It can be simple things. I had the most lovely, instead of having another cup of coffee, I went and got myself this really lovely juice instead. And I felt so much more energized putting that kind of nutrition in my body. That can be pleasurable. Taking that moment, I'm like, oh my God, I taste the ginger and this. Oh my God, it tastes so good. This is so delicious. Like celebrating when you make the choices instead of saying, oh, I should have done that. Oh, why did I do that? Why did I drink another cup of coffee? Oh my gosh. So, okay, the next day say, you know what? I actually deserve to have that juice and I deserve to be healthy. I'm worthy of that. So I'm going to go get that instead. Not because I failed, but because I realized that I actually do deserve that. And it's time for me to actually allow myself to have that. That's also taking yourself out of overwhelm and allowing you to come into a space of self-care on a very simple level.
Yeah, I also want to acknowledge too, as we talk about trusting what you need in that moment, also looking at the bigger pictures too, because I'll share a realization that it shocks me how I forget about this almost every year. I forget about this all the time until I'm in it. And then I'm beating myself up again mentally or whatever. Then I'm like, oh, hold on. In February and March is my trauma anniversary. As a child, I had a significant trauma at this time, and I did a lot of work on it, and it's all good. But still, that time of year, just like when you're grieving a death or whatever else, you're just not optimal. You're not running at 100% battery is all. And so 10 years ago, I was in the emergency room. I was mapping the patterns. I was in the emergency room 2 years in a row, almost to the day. And then the next year I was sick with the flu, like awful flu for a week. And I finally called my mom, what happened to me in February or March, and she told me, oh, that's when, such and such happened. And I was like, oh, it totally makes sense. Okay. So then I start to be proactive about the spring. And I know that spring is not going to be an easy time for my body. So I try to keep a lighter load. I build in more self-care, all of these things. And so and then one year, 2018, right before Mastery, I did Combo, the frog venom. And that was to release some of that energy so that I could have an easier flow, an easier time. And I feel like those effects lasted probably about 2 years. They probably stretched a couple years. And so now here we are in 2021, and I forget because I had a couple easy years. So I'm like, okay, I forget. And then all of a sudden I'm at self-care. I'm doing my best self-care ever. Really, just everything is locked in for self-care because I know that is the key to success on all levels is this self-care. And yet my body is acting as if I'm not doing any self-care. And I'm like, what is
because it does have that memory.
Well,
Very similar. My parents who both passed away and their birthdays are in February. So also I get melancholy and I'm like, what's going on? And I get a little hard to deal with sometimes. I'm like, what's going on? And then I finally go, oh, right, their birthdays are coming up and I miss them. And then as soon as I allow myself to acknowledge that, allow myself to actually say, yeah, that's what's going on and it's okay. And it's like you give yourself permission then to just let it go. But the other thing that I tuned into that's also very important that we didn't mention is for women especially is learning then how to honor your menstrual cycle and where you're most productive and allowing yourself to back up during certain times of your menstrual cycle. So for me, and I'm discovering more and more entrepreneur women in particular who are doing this. They're only working 3 weeks out of the month and they take an entire week off. Now, what that means is they're still marketing, they're still doing their stuff, but they're not seeing clients or doing major decision-making during a certain time. And so tuning in for you, when that time is. That doesn't mean when you're actually bleeding, right? So for me, it's usually it's like the 2 or 3 days before my actual bleeding begins. And then it's the first 1 to 2 days when I actually begins. So that 5-day period is when I need to take that time off. That's when I need to, I can't hold space for anyone. I'm so literally in this like menstrual PMS brain fog, and it's not anywhere near, because I have done a lot of, I eat extremely clean and take very good care of myself. I do a lot of beautiful, loving sexual practices with myself, but I still recognize and honor that this is just a part of me and my cycle. And so that time frame, I started actually honoring it and not doing heavy work during that time. And maybe I can connect with friends. I actually use that time to connect with friends more, be more in like stillness or cuddly, or even allow myself to watch like maybe more movies, or do a lot more massages. So finding what works for me that nourishes me to bring it, so that as soon as that's over, I'm back to like, yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. I can like hold 10 people's space today and work with 10 clients. And so I'm more energized and filled up. So that's another thing, is women are taught to ignore our moon cycles, to ignore our menstrual cycles. So even if you're in a corporate job, finding ways that you can maybe lighten your load during the times. So for other women, maybe it's the entire week that they're bleeding. Maybe it's the entire week before they're bleeding. Maybe it's during ovulation time. Like no matter what the doctors say, no matter what science says, every body is different. So learning how to tune in to where you are with your mind, your body, your menstrual cycle, all these things can really allow you to become more productive and less overwhelmed, because you're allowing yourself to take that time to come into stillness when you need it, and not denying yourself these things. And it makes us more powerful.
Yeah, I started doing that in 2013 when I started my PhD, and I realized, in every 4 weeks I had a 15-page paper due, and unfortunately that 15-page paper was always due during my menstrual week, and I'm like, why? And it took about maybe a year and a half or 2 years before the schedule changed. Either my cycle changed or their calendar changed, but what I had to do, so this is for those who are still in corporate jobs, or you still have deadlines and things that are due, during that time where you have the least amount of energy, is I had to get proactive. I put it in my calendar and just do as much work as I could, before that week. But it was impossible to shorten the timeline and get the project complete.
Yeah.
So what I really appreciate about my professors in my university is I got extensions. So I did as much as I could before that week, still was able to go a little bit lighter and relieve that pressure, because if you keep that pressure on yourself, you're going to end up getting tension, headaches, migraines, and then you're totally laid out. Or for me, my neck will lock up and I can't move my head. And that's my sign that it's like, okay, I'm really doing too much now, because my body won't even let me get up off the couch anymore. I can't even function. And so I know that's coming. It's knocked me out like that at least 3 times in my life. So I'm like, if I'm there, I'm in trouble. And then it's going to take several days to heal from that, too.
Yeah.
So it will force you, if you don't just let go. And then getting those extensions and those, having that grace from other people. And if you're in a business or a job or a friendship or whatever, where the people are not allowing you a little grace for self-care, then maybe rethink that too. Like, what can you do to have an environment that's a little bit more supportive to your natural cycles? And so what I'm realizing now is same as you, those days right before, maybe the first day or two of my cycle, but then the day, like the week my period is done, I have so much energy. It's crazy. Yeah. It's like everything. And then the more I rest during that time, the more energy I have the rest of the month too.
Yes.
So I just go crazy that first week after my cycle, and I try to get everything done that I can, because then I can coast for a little bit. And today already, I should still be in my good week, but I was tired, and I ended up meditating this afternoon and I fell asleep. I took a nap and I was like, well, I guess that's what's supposed to happen. And so instead of beating myself up, it's like, okay, we're still in, it's just the 1st of March. I'm still moving through my low battery time, and it's okay. And being gentle with myself, and also knowing, astrologically, which we both follow astrology, there's all these, sun and Uranus squares, which are hitting fixed signs like myself, Taurus, and
Yeah.
yourself, Scorpio, very harshly. So we're getting extra pressure from, actual planetary shifts and all of that. So that's adding to that whole load. And if we tap into all of those things, again, it's about, being compassionate with ourselves. And so I just really like these reminders, the brain dump, the little itty bits of self pleasure, the 2-minute dance breaks, the take a nap, the prepare your tea with love, all of these things. Some of these things I do, some of these things I know and forget, some of these things are new to me. So it's a huge toolbox of ways to be loving and gentle with ourselves as women.
Yes.
And I think the most important thing is the world is not set up to honor that. So you have to learn how to honor it by connecting with other powerful women like yourself, myself, who learned it from other powerful women, who learned it from other powerful women.
Right. You're building your community, not being afraid to reach out. One thing that I didn't even mention that I do for myself all the time, and this actually absolutely keeps me from overwhelm, is when I start getting a little cuckoo crazy, is I actually cut my vulva and I hold on to my yoni and I talk to her and I go, and I take a deep breath and I might even put my hand there and I just hold it. I have my hand and I go, right. I'm reminding myself, and I'm like, I love you so much. And then I just all of a sudden it's like, you take yourself out of that, right? You take yourself out of this masculine, over linear, kind of crazy world. All of a sudden you're like, wow, when's the last time I actually loved on her? So I actually have a habit of when I wake up in the morning, I actually hold and cup and stroke gently my outer lips of my vulva. And I don't do it just for, sometimes, it might lead to self pleasure. For the most part though, I'm doing it actually as a space of feeling, it feels nice. And it feels very loving. And it's like a morning reconnection to myself. Whereas when you have a partner, you might gaze into each other's eyes and kiss, do your morning gratitudes. And for me, I'm single at this time. I actually wake up every morning and I do that. And then throughout the day, if I feel overwhelmed, even when I was working full-time as a flight attendant, I had a little break where I did flight attendant to pay for my way through my schooling. I would go into the lavatory and I just cup myself. I would just and I just right. I'm still me. I'm still a woman. This yoni is still beautiful and needs to be honored. And it would immediately bring me back down out of the stress of the job. It immediately bring me back into my body. So I do that actually still. I do that when I wake up. I do that throughout the day. If I feel overwhelmed and I'm like, what is going on? I don't even know what to do. And I feel myself going totally into my head, immediately cup my vulva and I hold on to her and I just go, and then I might even just gently stroke the lips, right, you're still there. You still exist. And then I'd be like, have I told you how beautiful you are today? I love you so much. You're so beautiful. Does anyone tell you how beautiful you are? You're amazing. And I talk to her. And then I do that also right before I go to bed. I actually take a moment and I cut my vulva and put my hand on my heart and I just thank her. And I'm just with her. And just doing that simple movement, you can do that all day long, as much as, and if you're someone who's in a corporate job, then you can go to the bathroom and just cup your vulva and just take that moment. And if you want to really get close, you can just sit on the toilet and then you can just kind of stroke her a little bit, it's not about masturbation. It's about connecting to her with love. And that brings women, because our core, so in Tantra, our pull, our sexual pull to the outside world is, they say, in the breast. So you can do breast massage as well. So I frequently also just cut my breast and give them love. And then breast massage is so important. I do that daily. I put my lotion on and I actually take time and I do a short breast massage every day. But if you're just jumped for time and you need to reconnect, just cup your breast. If you're in a cubicle, just kind of look around, make sure no one's on, just kind of cup your breast for a minute, or go in the bathroom and cup your breast and hold them for a minute. So just also remembering and honoring your body and taking yourself out of your head, not be going, I need to get myself out of my head. Why am I in there? Instead of doing those judgmental things, I really invite people to say, what can I do with love and gentleness for myself instead? I can cut my breasts and maybe I can do a gentle breast massage over my clothes. I can cut my vulva and just hold her for a minute. And I can just hug and be like, Right. This is all a part of me. It's all connected. I'm not separate from this. This is actually all of me. And then I can come from this power space to be more in, how do I get out of overwhelm? Okay, let me cup her. Okay. Oh, oh, yeah, I feel much better. Okay. Let me go look at that again with new eyes now. Let me go just take a moment and have that. Like, let me just, oh, this is really nice. Maybe I'll just stay here for another minute. That kind of thing. So remembering to do such simple things. And when we forget, instead, I've developed a habit of doing is the moment I catch myself having this is I so honor I have these thoughts. I so honor I have these emotions. And I love myself so much. And I'm fine. I'm perfect the way I am. And these emotions, these thoughts are a part of me, and I'm going to choose in this very moment to allow it to go. But I'm going to honor that they're always going to be here. They're never going to go. Because the biggest thing we end up doing in overwhelm too is we give ourselves this idea and thought that we somehow are supposed to be these ascended masters who can let go of everything. And one of the things for meditation, so just to touch on this for people, is there's 3 stages of meditation. And this is something people don't ever touch on. And you can practice this is all thoughts come, then all thoughts are compartmentalized. So you start filing them in filing cabinets. And then all thoughts are then prioritized. We don't meditate with an empty mind. There's always a thought there. So what we start learning how to do in our body is the same thing, right? All thoughts come, good or bad, but are they really good or bad, or are they just comfortable and uncomfortable, or trained and untrained, right? So redefining these things, allowing yourself to come up with new definitions, allowing yourself to maybe even create new names for yourself on certain habits you have, and doing it in a more fun, pleasurable way. So instead of thinking, my gosh, I have 4 cups of coffee a day, be like, okay, well, there's days when I need extra gasoline. So this is my gasoline day, or, oh, this is my over perfume day, or, so having fun ways to rename it, but also coming back to cupping your vulva. Men can do the same thing. Men's pool. So men's actual energetic pool comes from their genitals. So for men, they can go in the bathroom, and men do it all the time anyway, kind of like they adjust themselves, but go into the bathroom. If you're at work, if you're in a corporate, if you're at home, and just cup yourself and just hold on to your cock and balls and just honor them. One of the things that I do realize in this society is that we're taught men's penises are these aggressive, penetrative, and they're beautiful, and the Sanskrit is called lingam, and lingam actually means a wand of light.
Oh.
And so yoni, which is what we call women in Sanskrit, actually means sacred space. It's so coming back into more of awareness, even as a man, you can go and cup your cock and balls and just hold them and love on them and be like, you know what? Thank you for being here. Because of that, I have more outward energy. Because of you, I can connect to my partner on such a deep level. Because of you, I'm me. And I honor you. And I actually find that you're wise when I really listen to your wise. So changing the relationship with yourself and starting to create connection to that center space, because what we're trying to do is that genitals don't exist. And then we go into overwhelm because we're up here. So if we can learn to bring ourselves back into just cupping and loving on our genitals, we actually bring our bodies back into connection and back into stillness. And this also can take us immediately out of overwhelm because we're all suddenly remembering we're connected.
And it's also the root chakra and the sacral chakra, which is, again, grounding, financial security, prosperity, basic needs, and then the second chakra being creativity and finding those creative solutions.
Creativity, creation, energy, sexual energy, all of those things. So those 2 things are right there next to each other. So they bring us back into grounding. They bring us back into our primal beingness, right? Our upper chakras are what connect us to the higher elements, to gods, goddess, the higher, more ethereal, but the lower chakras are there to ground us, right? They're there to connect us to our primal needs and desires and life force. So instead of ignoring and honoring it,
Mhm.
bring it back into this connection with Earth.
I have a professor, actually my dissertation chair, who's a shaman, and she helps guide souls to the afterlife, and she worked in bereavement. She did her dissertation on bereavement, but when I took energy medicine with her, she was talking about how she had a homeless man that she was treating once through energy work, like they had some sort of clinic or whatever. And he came in and she can see chakras and she can see auras naturally, whatever. And she said his upper chakras were so big, they were massive, but his lower were not, she couldn't even see them. They were pretty much non-existent. And so of course he's this homeless schizophrenic man running around like talking nonsense because he had no way to ground into this earthly reality. And then there's other people that have very large root chakras, and maybe they are doing really well in corporate America, or they have really great finances, but they're very disconnected to this spiritual wisdom. And of course the ideal being, aligning them and having them all about the same size so that that energy can flow back and forth. But for a lot of us, I think in our community and the spiritual community, and as we're using some of these ancient techniques, is we can be very comfortable up here and even in the mind and in our spiritual guidance, but then realizing that bringing that in and enhancing that root chakra is the physical manifestation. And there's so much now that spirituality is so trendy, I'll say. There is spiritual bypassing. There is like, you're not, live in non-attachment. You're not a body. And so I feel like this is almost the divine feminine too, of reminding us, yes, we are very much a body. We are very much our five senses. We are in these human bodies to bring the divine forward and create and to birth something material out of that yoni portal. I mean, we actually birth babies, but we're also birthing other things by bringing them through those and developing those sacral and root chakras, right? So we can't.
And we bleed every month.
We bleed every month. Yeah.
Every month for women. And even if you've hit menopause, you still are connected. That part of you, even if you've had a hysterectomy, the energy of that organ is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of women who they've hit menopause and they still have like phantom PMS and phantom cramps. So it's still the energy of that source of bleeding, releasing, of being present. That's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't ever go away, even if you stop bleeding, even if you're in full menopause, even if you had a hysterectomy, the energy of that is still present in your body. It still has the memory. It still has the cycle in there, and it still needs to be honored. Mm-hmm. And you're right with that. Well, and this is one of the things. So Tantra is always been associated with just sex, right? Like every time you hear Tantra, everything you're like, oh, it's all about sex and it's all about like moving the energy to have these sexual tantric orgasms and working. And that is absolutely a part of that. But the reason why it's there is it is still a limb of yoga. So yoga has multiple limbs. They have different limbs. So they call them limbs of yoga, which is like, they have the householder ones, you have the spiritual ones, you have the meditation versus the actual asana. Asana is the physical pose. And Tantra is another limb of yoga, is actually a part of the yoga system. And what it really is about is it's not about just sex. Like sexuality is part of it, because what it is in a lot of yoga traditions, you're believing to truly reach ahimsa, to hit that full transcendence. You transcend the body, you lift from the body, you come up into this higher level of consciousness that is without body. Whereas Tantra is actually about hitting that same level of ahimsa, of transcendence through the body. Allowing yourself then to create the energy flow of working with the chakras and creating these long, expansive, orgasmic experiences and energy movement through the body that then transcends you closer to God through these pleasure sources of being in body. Mm-hmm. So of allowing, then that's why they're called lingams and yonis, a sacred space and wand of light. Those come together and now they create even more stronger plugged in power source of getting closer to God through our bodies. Mm-hmm. So that's really what Tantra's that's really more what it's about, is actually creating these enlightenment through the body versus leaving the body behind, and being fully embodied and learning how to bring all emotion, what we view as bad emotion, like anger, sadness, grief, instead actually allowing yourself to cycle that emotion through the body and allowing it to turn into pure raw energy. And it to fill you up. So then having a grief orgasm, having an angry orgasm, having a terrified orgasm. So allowing those emotions, just like joy and high vibrational emotions, to cycle through the body as just energy, as actual cyclical energy that allows you to nourish and allows you to then bring it to pure raw energy that you can then utilize and nourish yourself to move forward.
I think you just named our next topic. I think you just named it. Using your emotions and bringing it into, raw energy and orgasmic energy. I love that. That it would be a very practical thing that I think people could really benefit from knowing. What does that look like? Because I think a lot of people use orgasm, just a quick orgasm, to release a bit of the tension from those energy states, but really they're not using the energy. They're like taking the edge off. So how do we really get in touch with that energy to use it to shoot forward? And that seems like that would be a wonderful way out of overwhelm as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's really powerful. So through my years of experimenting with opening up my education around sexuality, experiences with the body, experience with embodiment, with pleasure, and always, and coming from some of that space, coming from this very like deep scientific curiosity. It wasn't just about woo woo for me, right? Because, people like to call this spiritual woo woo, would really, right now, science is proving more and more that this woo-woo is actually scientifically proven, is actually.
I'm doing a PhD in it for that reason. Yeah.
Right. and so like they're proving more and more how this stuff actually helps heal people from anxiety and depression, more than medication, more than talk therapy even. So, allowing that. So one of the things that I really take from being part of the One Taste community, I was actually working in the house of where the CEO and the higher ups were when they set up shop in Vegas. I was actually cleaning their house and cooking their dinner years ago, and also practicing orgasmic meditation and seeing like firsthand some of the stuff. And it has a bad rap, I think, sometimes for some people. But if you take really what the core essence teaching is, you get a lot from it. One of the things they used to teach, though, is climax and orgasm are very different. So you have peaks and valleys, right? So you're now learning how to expand your orgasm. What does orgasm mean? Orgasm means, like right now, if you get flushed and excited and you're feeling this like peak of energy from this topic of us talking about all this, you're in an orgasmic state. So learning that orgasm is not about just having this sensation in your genitals and having this peak. And then what it really is about going up the hill and back down the hill, going up the hill and back down the hill. And when we drop down into the hill, what are we dropping down into the valley? We're then taking that moment of stillness to drop off and let go of the things that no longer work. And then we go back up to pick up the new stuff and to come into a more expansive pleasure. So yeah, definitely learning how to have the grief orgasm. That doesn't mean you're going to all suddenly climax. It means orgasmic state is much more expansive and much more pleasurable than just this like idea that, unfortunately, I'm a huge advocate of this, is all this free porn and a lot of the porn that's very patriarchal based. It teaches that for women and men, hard, fast, and to the point, and climax, and we're done, right? And it forgets to take all of these like hours of expansive experiences and pleasure of the stillness, the numbness, like embracing all of it as part of the orgasmic experience. And that also plays into overwhelm, right? Because we're taught that just like that, we have everything has to be this way, and it has to peak, and it has to go over the edge, and it has to go like this, and that's the only way it works, instead of allowing those rolling hills of coming up into this stuff. You have, oh my gosh, I have so much stuff, I don't know how I'm going to get it all done. Okay, let's gently go back down the hill and drop some of this stuff off. How do we come back into like how do we come into this over busyness orgasm? Let's take that energy and turn it into raw energy instead of overwhelm. Let's learn how to connect that into our bodies and then drop some of that off and then pick up new stuff that's actually nourishing, better habits. Not even, I would say better habits, but healthier choices, healthier habits, and not making them so big that they're not attainable. Instead, allowing yourself to come into this space of, how can I do this in a small way that can grow down over time and not being in such a rush? Because we're also in a society of instant gratification, because we have really fast Wi-Fi. We have all these fancy, like I'm on a brand new computer because mine stopped holding a charge and it's starting to get a little slower. So now I got the newer, better, improved, like, oh my gosh, let's see what it can do kind of thing, right? Instead of saying, okay, it didn't take me overnight to get this way. Mm-hmm. It's not going to take me overnight to get out of it. Mm-hmm. It's going to be baby steps, and it's going to take, and if you're someone who's in complete overwhelm in your life to a point of almost burning out, you're not going to get out of it overnight. You're not going to get all better, and taking a pill is only going to cover that symptom and not the cause.
Well, yeah. And that's why I also don't want anyone watching this to mistake what we're saying and think that when we say even something like start your day with pleasure, even if it's brief, to think that they need to do 3 minutes of penetrative orgasm, sex that involves climax or ejaculation or whatever else, and then that's starting their day with pleasure, and then they're going to be fine, because that might not be pleasurable for either of the partners if they haven't had a chance to actually savor. And so what you're talking about, like the breast massage or cupping the breast or stroking the skin for a moment for those 3 minutes and not being focused on a goal, actually might be more pleasurable and more serving to the overwhelm that you're trying to get through than the other. So it's like retraining our brain in the way that we think about it. And and by your definition of orgasmic, I really love that. I know I've heard you talk about the difference between climax and orgasm before, but by your definition of orgasmic states, I'm sitting here listening to you, and like, I'm in an orgasmic state right now just by talking about this. What excites me, which is the research, which is what I'm doing with my PhD. My dissertation is on Kundalini awakening. It is on spiritual sexual empowerment. That's why I'm doing this show, right? It's congruent with that. And to be feeling overwhelmed about completing this pilot study and this dissertation and thinking, oh man, all these things, and how do I get through it, and what are the steps? And then to stop and have this conversation with you for almost 77 minutes now, and to have worked myself into an orgasmic state by simply lighting myself up about the topic. Now I'm aligned. Now I'm like, I'm excited to do the dissertation. I'm excited to plan out the next step in my pilot study when we hang up here on YouTube, because now it makes sense. It's like, yeah, I want the world to know this. I want to have the world learn this. I want to validate this with research. I want to publish my research on this. It all makes sense. It's a totally different perspective shift. And so if you were able to accomplish that right here in the moment, what you're talking about on this live YouTube, I am certain that other people can accomplish this in their day-to-day and whatever they're feeling overwhelmed with. And I definitely recommend you as a coach as well. Obviously, I've had the benefit of knowing you for many years, and experimenting with our methods on each other, and practicing different skills, and sometimes just trading because we both need it. So
and that's also a very powerful thing about overwhelm. Is one thing we're taught is to do it all by ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with getting outside help. That doesn't always mean as a therapist. It could just be something as a coach, or maybe you find a mentor, or maybe you find an accountability partner where you guys can just share and hold space for each other. And what does that look like? And like, creating parameters of, okay, every week we're going to meet for half an hour and just be able to dump everything that's happening, and you just hold space and say, I witness you in all this. And and you're still beautiful and perfect and divine just as you are. And just even having that. So, allowing yourself to create community of support as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we're taught you have to do it all by ourselves, right? So what if you allow yourself to not have just the complaining partner, but the space holding partner? So find someone who you say, okay, we agree to come together every week for half an hour, 50 minutes, an hour, where we don't take turns just talking about all the things we're scared of, all things. And instead of fixing me, we agree we're just going to mirror back what we heard, just so we know we've been heard.
Mhm.
Just so we know that somebody is hearing us and loving on us and
Mhm.
holding the space for us.
Mhm.
So even doing that from man to man, man to woman, woman to woman, finding a friend where you can just do all that and they say, so on. What I'm hearing is you feel overwhelmed because you're trying to get this project done and your boss is not listening to you and you're working really hard and he doesn't recognize how hard you're working.
Mhm.
Yes. And
Mhm.
I also hear that I heard you say you're frustrated because you're tired of not being seen when you work so hard to be seen, and that you don't feel valued at work because they don't look at what you actually are capable of, because, Joe Schmo over here apparently has like a better degree or has like, so, just being able to like feedback without going, "Ooh, that bastard," and "Oh my God, I can't believe it." Be like, so what I'm hearing is,
Mhm.
yes.
And it's a
And,
great skill for the listener to practice even.
and it's so important because also learning how to become an active listener, to really listen and be able to feedback what you're hearing in there, and not in your own words, in their own words.
Mhm.
So learning how to say that, sometimes just that is enough, because all of a sudden now you feel heard.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then what I recommend and I invite people to do is repeat it back and then say, is this correct? Is this how you said it? So they can say, no, what I said was, okay, so what you said was,
Mhm.
yes, yes. And
Mhm.
then you can even say, I can see how that can happen for you. I understand where you're coming from on that. Or I may not agree with that, but I definitely see where you're coming from that. And I can actually honor you where you're at. So
Mhm.
learning that too, of we're in this age now, especially with pandemic, we're just not getting the connection we used to have, right? So just now creating, like, even if it's on phone or Zoom, where we have this space holding for each other,
Mhm.
finding one friend that doesn't need to fix you, that's not going to commiserate with you, but that's just going to listen and repeat back, and you take turns doing that. Like, that's another beautiful tool you can do, even if it's just once a month. Make it attainable for what you can fit in your schedule to not go into overwhelm. Stop adding so much to your plate. Matter of fact, look at your plate and ask, what can I take off my plate today that really doesn't matter?
Decluttering. It's like decluttering your space, decluttering your calendar. Decluttering is so powerful, especially when you're starting to create something new. If you don't like where you're at, I got that download strong today. I need to go back to my garage again. I have to keep
Yeah.
continually like letting things go there so that I can let things go here
Well,
too.
and even something I heard you say is like, oh my gosh, like describing orgasm that way just shifted. So what if, instead of you going into just inviting you to, like, for you, just inviting you to redefine, what does it look like when I write my dissertation and I'm doing these pilot, this actual dissertation? Am I really going one way and then having to back up, or am I actually going up the hill and then I'm going back down to drop off?
Right, right,
So I
right.
can go back up the hill. What if I allowed myself to be in an orgasmic state of having this beautiful peak, and then even in that peak saying, okay, well, some of this has to be dropped off, and going back down in the valley and dropping it off. So coming into a space, instead of allowing that to be your, giving yourself permission to view it in that way, a more gentle way, versus it, oh, I'm going the wrong direction, I have to back up all the time and I'm in a bumper car.
Yeah, I think that's a great reframe, and even like that invitation for exploration, which also we could use plenty of sexual metaphors for that as well. But a nature metaphor that I had is this weekend. I had a lot of work to do, but I also knew my body was calling for rest and leisure
Yeah.
and connection with my tribe. So I said yes. I said no to 4 social invites, and I said yes to one that involved nature. So on my Instagram, I posted the picture of us. We were going to hike this 6-mile trail to go waterfall hunting, and that was closed down for safety maintenance by the U.S. Forest Service. So we ended up having to drive way out of the way and go to this other one that was much smaller, not much of a workout, but really it was what my body probably most needed. And it wasn't an efficient use of time, but it ended up being very nourishing in all the ways that I needed it to be. And because it was such incredible people, the time in the car was just as pleasurable as being in nature, because we're laughing, we're joking, we're talking, we're connecting. And so things like that are orgasmic. And these are most of the folks that I went to Tulum with too. So it's a reunion in when the energy that was created there. So even it makes sense to think of the dissertation that way, or whoever's listening, whatever big, huge project you have that you feel like you don't quite know what the clear path is. We didn't know how to get there. We stopped and talked to 4 different people, and we got little bits of information along the way, and it made it more fun. I felt like this is like a movie, like we're in a movie, and this character now entered the scene, and we're going to watch how this conversation goes. And it just was such a lovely day. And so if I can think about my pilot studying my dissertation in that way, I'm winning, like I am in that orgasmic state. So thank you so much for that. And I know I want to wrap this up, to be mindful both of our rest and sleep and beauty sleep and all of that. But let's give people a path who are really ready to do this work, because I know you have told me that you work with people that are at the advanced level. They've already gone through the trauma healing. They've already gone through some of the basics, and you're ready to take them to the next level.
Yeah, most of the people that I work with are people who are not only body aware, but they've done a lot of work on themselves. They're at a point, though, that all the work they've done is still not enough, right? They're at a point where they still they're usually like, they figured their life out, they're like but they still are missing that element, that one level that needs to take them to that next step, which is learning how to really connect to the body. Because we are also we have women that they're regular yoga practitioners, and they're successful business women, and they're successful bosses, or they're successful employees, or they're successful moms, and they've done the work. They've done so much training on themselves. They've done the work, but there's something missing. And that's usually who the women I work with is. We find that missing point, and we connect back into their erotic selves. We connect back into their sexual energy and their sexual power, and we connect into that authenticity, and then learn how to come from that source all the time in whatever form it takes. So learning how to, and like really go into that next level.
You said, you need something outside of yourself sometimes to bump up, to grow, and then creating that community too, to reinforce that change. I know that just from psychotherapeutic theories that I've studied.
Yeah.
Same narrative theory, it's very similar. And so I would encourage anybody watching, if that's you, then go to Tara's Instagram page, check out what she's offering. And if you're not quite there yet, I'm offering a 12-week Mind Body Skills group for people that are just starting their trauma journey, or to work through that. And it's also going back to the body, but they need structure. It's 2 hours a week for 12 weeks to work through that in a structured, evidence-based way. And then you're on your way to those deeper levels. And if you're interested in that, you can find me on my website, natashaedwina.com. Sign up for my Gut Matters ebook, because that will help you with the nutritional piece that Tara and I are both talking about. That is so important as a foundation for trauma work, for sexual healing, for all of this body. You have to honor the body. It's the most essential, basic way to honor the body.
Yeah.
Nutrition.
Yeah. And so they can absolutely get a hold of me at tara@taracridland.com. I have my Instagram, which is Tara Cridland Women's Empowerment Coach. I also have, my Facebook is just Tara Cridland. And then one thing I just want to throw out there is actually my colleague and I are actually, so she's also a sex, love, relationship coach. We are actually hosting a retreat on a yacht in June that's going to be traveling to Greece, and it is for women only. So it is we're looking to open up to 6 women, and we already have some bites, so it might be even less than that. So space is very limited. So 6 women, it's 2 meals included, and we're going to be focused on gut health, women's sexuality, connection. We're both yoga teachers. There's going to be yoga. There's going to be, so we're actually hosting that. So if anyone's interested in this deeper dive, so it's going to be a week-long retreat on a yacht going through the Greek Isles. And it's for women only, of really celebrating, connecting, and actually creating these women's circles. And then part of that is actually then having a 30 to 40 minute private self-mentoring or private mentoring with one of us as well. So having like a little lasering coaching session with us as well. So that's another way that they can dive a little deeper as they want to, in a luxurious place. And they're going to have lots of time to go explore and have fun. It's not going to be this structured. It's going to be some things that are available for you that are going to be a little structured. And then a lot of like sensual fun playtime out on the land and in the sun. And so everyone's like, it's COVID. I'm like, it is. So that's why we're keeping it very limited. And we're actually taking you out on a yacht. And we're offering this beautiful plant-based, gluten-free food only, so that you can actually feel what it feels like to be in a healthy mindset, healthy food, and get that energy flowing. So if they're interested, they can email me and I can forward them the information of that. And yeah, so they can definitely get a hold of me in those ways. And I love to work with, my favorite thing is to watch women that are just on the brink, just get over the beautiful edge and finally come into this space of such deep self-love and eroticism that's just unshakable. And it shifts them and turns them into these powerful, magical beings.
Yeah.
Just that is like my ultimate favorite thing to see is that. And for me, it's not about the end result, but it's beautiful when I see it. It's about watching it. To me, it's watching the journey and the rebirthing of this person as I work with them each week or every other week, that watching that process of them unfolding and blossoming and becoming like this authentic person that they've been searching for so long for.
And I just had a vision of what the world would look like if that was all women or most women. I mean,
and for all you beautiful, healthy, masculine men out there that are watching this as well, yes, it takes you higher too. So being in the presence of this automatically takes you higher. And we do need you beautiful men to do your work as well and to create this beautiful, healthy, masculine container for yourselves and for your healing, as well as for this planet and for the women that are in it with you.
And when the women do the healing work and they become those magical beings, it frees the men to do that as well for themselves.
Yeah, it frees them on many levels, including being able to be in their authentic self and to take them out of this heavy, responsible, weight of the world on their shoulders, space that we've put men in. Men are also very beautiful. Like I do primarily and only work right now with women, but men are beautiful and they have so much incredible, strong king, druid, priest energy that they could have out in the world that's so healing for all of us, that's been squashed. That not only is the patriarchal doesn't damage women only, it's damaging men. This is not men. It was kind of created by men, but not all men. This was created by men of high power to destroy that energy. And so us doing this work and bringing the men into this as well is going to heal not only the planet, but heal our souls.
Yeah. And I want to share as well that you had given me the suggestion to go into meditation and connect with my ancestors, and also to connect with, have a ritual around my partner and I connecting our ancestors. And I did do that piece of mine. And interestingly enough, one of the downloads I got was it's not really the patriarchy is kind of a game. It's a scam. It's not real. The information that I got is, if you, like you were talking about with the birds and the animals, if you take your partnership or your family and you go off into nature and you don't buy into all the programming, your men and women know and understand how powerful they each are and how integral they both are to a human society, just by the tasks of daily living, in the ways that you both need to show up in order to have the family grow and prosper or whatnot. And even calling it patriarchy is inaccurate, because it is about dominating and oppression and using another being to further yourself, which is not an inherently masculine thing.
No, it's not. It's a
not a
societal
healthy
training for
masculine.
control of people.
Yes.
And when you, like you said, when you go into nature with your family like that, where there's no more of these restraints, constrictions, and rules attached to it, human beings are actually naturally meant to be living in cooperation. They're not naturally violent or war driven or greedy. That is not a natural state of being. They're actually more cooperative. And the societies that still, there's not many, but the societies that still exist today that are egalitarian and that most of the women are in charge, the men are actually relaxed, they're happy, they're healthy, and they don't have problems with like heart disease and stroke or any of the things, high blood pressure. That doesn't exist in those societies. So there are still some hunter-gatherers, there are still some egalitarian societies where the women are actually kind of like the rulers of the village, and they come into this more like sharing, cooperative, supportive space. And the men in those societies, they're studying them now because the men are like really happy, they're relaxed, they're like, they're more productive. It takes the pressure off of them. You put this pressure on men to be these, like, they must be good in bed. They must be good at making their money. They must own all this stuff. They must be the best caretaker and best father. But we forget none of them have been taught this. So they're also in overwhelm. They've also been told, but you can't cry. You can't show your emotion. You have to just plug your way through. You're not allowed to go into overwhelm. So how does that transcend? Then it transcends into violent behavior, aggression, into resentment, into all these other, but if they internalize it, it goes into heart disease and it goes into stress and high blood pressure and all these other things.
Turning those pressures and throwing them on the backs of women and giving them double pressure. But
right, because they're just so burnt out too. They're so under pressure. They just don't even want to handle it, and they just need someone else to take it off their hands. And so then it becomes this very toxic, unhealthy dynamic. So yeah, all of these are important to consider. It's not just about women. I mean, I primarily talk about women because that's who I specialize in, but I really want to give a shout out and acknowledge the beauty of men and how wonderful they really are. And that even the ones that aren't behaving on their best behavior right now, that there's sometimes a reason behind it. And that actually, if they had more support and love and were given permission to let their hair down a little bit more and come into pleasure.
And if they do the healing work, the trauma work too.
Healing and trauma. A lot of them are very traumatized. They're very, without even knowing, they don't realize that being told over and over again, suck it up, don't act like a girl, men don't cry. That over time creates conditional traumatization. So allowing the acknowledgement that even if you've not been beaten or had any kind of like serious trauma, those little like aggressions towards you as a man have created a conditioning of trauma for you. So doing the work around that. So one of the things that I just want to throw out there before we wrap it up is one thing that came to me that that kind of downloaded here is that for those people who are listening that are in office jobs instead of office, let's go get a shoebox and fill it with dirt. Make sure there's no ants in it. Fill it with dirt and take it into your office and take your shoes off during the day and stick your feet in the dirt.
Oh, I love that.
That's a simple way too to just come back to like connect to the earth and take yourself out of overwhelm. I mean, can you really be angry when you're feeling dirt between your toes?
Yeah.
So just little things like get open, like be open and give yourself permission to get creative and think outside the box. What does bring me pleasure? I love the way balloons sound when the air, like finding these silly, fun things that you truly deeply enjoy. I want crayons. So for a long time, I would bring on the plane with me when I was in my little in-between phase for school. I would bring a crayon. I would bring actually coloring pencils and a coloring book. And I was back there on my jump seat coloring. And it made all the difference. It was so much pleasure for me. And then I was like, absolutely, I can take care of that for you. I wasn't stressed like all the other flight attendants.
So important. So important. And secondary message, be nice to your flight attendants.
Right now in this pandemic.
Take you places.
Yeah, in this pandemic, we're not being treated very well. That's actually the laws have changed to be more strict in the penalties from that bit, but we won't go there. Just remember, not even flight attendants, be kind to everyone in this time. Everyone is stressed. And when you look at someone, remember there's someone's mother, daughter, brother, father too. They're, and everyone and don't give into the fear, like allow instead love, because the fear is what's perpetuating more and more of this overwhelm and more of the stress that's being caused. Not, and it's not to downplay, the pandemic's real. I had COVID. So if anyone's saying, I actually recovered from COVID back in December. So I know firsthand what it's like, but you can't live through the fear of that. You have to still be safe, be smart, and still be conscious and come with love.
Right.
So
yeah, and it absolutely doesn't surprise me that your other life was as a flight attendant, helping people get to their destination, and here you are also as a coach, helping people get to their destination. So
yeah.
thank you very much for leading this flight today and this journey. And I hope it landed well with everyone watching. And we'll definitely have a return flight pretty soon. And I guess it sounds like maybe we'll be talking about.
Yeah, let's learn how to have emotional orgasms and
Yes, emotional orgasms. Yes,
orgasms that are, we're going to learn emotional orgasms that are turned into pure raw energy, so you can power up from the anger instead of drain yourself.
All right. So Tara and I will pick a date, and I hope you meet us back here. But the show's live every week. So I'll be back with Kirti next week and another powerful topic. And thank you so much. As always, such a pleasure. So knowledgeable, so beautiful, so inspiring, and so grateful for you.
Yeah, I love you too.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.